These are the country stars of the 1990s who vanished. Names like Jeff Carson, Lila McCann, and Rhett Akins. And the strange truth is that almost none of them actually disappeared. The 90s were the decade country music conquered everything. The radio, the charts, the stadiums, the fashion. While Garth Brooks was selling out stadiums and becoming the best-selling solo artist in American history, a whole generation of artists was rising in his wake. For a few short years, the biggest names in Nashville were some of the biggest names anywhere on the planet. Then the decade ended, the boom cooled, and a whole class of stars who had sold millions of records simply slid out of view. We stopped seeing their faces. We stopped hearing their names. And so we did what people always do, which was assume they were gone. Here is the thing nobody tells you. They didn't fall off the face of the earth. They're hiding in plain sight. Some of them wrote the songs you streamed this morning, and one of them might have pulled you over for speeding. You've been surrounded by these people the whole time, you just stopped recognizing them. So let's go find them. Start with the youngest. In 1997, a teenager named Lila McCann arrived in the middle of the biggest decade country music ever had. Her single Down Came a Blackbird put her on the radio before she was old enough to drive the tour bus, and I Wanna Fall in Love made her one of the brightest young names in the genre. She was breaking through at exactly the same moment LeAnn Rimes was becoming a household name, and where LeAnn Rimes chased the spotlight all the way to pop crossover stardom, Lila McCann did something almost nobody in that position has ever done. She had everything in front of her. Then, sometime after the turn of the millennium, she was simply gone. No scandal, no public collapse. She had reached a fork that almost no one in Nashville reaches that young. The choice to keep chasing the spotlight or step back and build an ordinary life. She chose the ordinary life. Think about how rare that is. A teenager looked directly at fame, decided she had seen enough of it, and walked away with her name and her dignity completely intact. That isn't a tragedy. That's a kind of quiet courage the industry almost never rewards. Then there are the ones who didn't choose to leave, the ones the spotlight just quietly let go of. In 1996, a band out of Oklahoma called Ricochet released a song called Daddy's Money, and it went straight to #1. 6 musicians, a major label deal with Columbia Records, a sound that mixed traditional twang with something built for radio. They looked unstoppable. But a band is a fragile machine. The drummer, Jeff Bryant, left in 1999 when carpal tunnel syndrome made it too painful to play. Another member walked away to join a different act, and a founding member left to focus on his family. The hits dried up, the lineup kept thinning, and Ricochet drifted out of the national conversation entirely. Here's the part you never hear. They never actually broke up. To this day, a version of the band still tours, still playing Daddy's Money for crowds who remember every single word. They didn't vanish. They just got small enough that the spotlight forgot where to point. Some disappearances are louder than others. John Michael Montgomery was one of the defining voices of the whole decade, and at one point he stood up and told his fans in plain language that he was going to disappear for a while. He needed to go fight the demons that had drained his health and his energy for years. He was talking about addiction. It would have been so easy for that to be the end of the story, because this genre is full of people who said exactly that and were never heard from again. But Montgomery came back. He returned to the road, he played the shows, and then, on his own terms and his own schedule, he retired in 2024. He did not vanish into a cautionary tale. He vanished just long enough to save his own life, and then he decided himself when the curtain would come down. Now stop for a second and notice the pattern, because this is the part that should change how you hear the whole story. Every one of these people gets filed under the same lazy little phrase, whatever happened to, forgotten, faded, washed up. But look at what actually happened. A teenager chose a normal life. A band chose to keep playing for the fans who stayed. A man chose to fight for his health and won. These aren't failures, they're choices. And the biggest choice of all belongs to a man named Jeff Carson. In 1995, Jeff Carson released a song called Not On Your Love on Curb Records, and it went to #1. His follow-up, The Car, won him an Academy of Country Music Award for Video of the Year. And over the course of his career, he put 14 singles on the Billboard Country chart. By every measure Nashville uses, he was a star. Then, in 2008, his son was born, and Jeff Carson sat down and did the math. The hits had slowed, the income had thinned, and as he explained it himself years later, he simply had to get a job. So he walked away from music, and at the age of 44, he put on a different uniform and became a police officer in Franklin, Tennessee. Sit with that image for a moment. For more than a decade, somewhere in Tennessee, there was a patrol officer answering calls and working traffic stops who had once stood on a stage holding a #1 record. The people he pulled over had no idea who he used to be. He wasn't hiding from his past, he was just living an honest life directly in front of it. He came back to music briefly in 2019 to release a song called God Save the World. Then, in March of 2022, Jeff Carson died of a heart attack. He was 58 years old. When the news broke, his police department didn't mourn him as a fallen celebrity. They mourned him as one of their own, a man who had quietly traded the stage for a badge and who never once made a show of the trade. Which brings us all the way back to where we started, to the idea that these people never really left at all. In 1995, a singer from Georgia named Rhett Akins had a hit called That Ain't My Truck on Decca Records. It climbed to #3, and he landed a #1 with Don't Get Me Started. Then, after his last major label album in 1998, Rhett Akins, the recording star, quietly faded out. But he didn't leave Nashville. He picked up a pen. Over the next 20 years, Rhett Akins became one of the most successful songwriters in the entire business. He's the hand behind Honeybee for Blake Shelton. He's the hand behind I Don't Want This Night to End and Huntin' Fishin' Lovin' Every Day for Luke Bryan. He co-wrote Boys Round Here for Blake Shelton and a whole stack of other #1s that you've absolutely heard, even if you never once saw his name attached to them. And there's one final piece to this. His son, Thomas Rhett Akins Jr., grew up watching every part of it. The radio tours, the songs put on hold, the success and the failure, and grew into one of the biggest country stars of the next generation. So the next time someone asks you whatever happened to the 90s country stars who vanished, you can give them the honest answer. They didn't vanish. One of them put on a uniform. One of them went back to school. One of them got sober. And one of them picked up a pen and quietly wrote the songs his own son would one day sing to stadiums. The next time a country song comes on, listen closely to whoever wrote it. One of the vanished might be hiding right there in the credits, exactly where he's been the whole time.